NYC.
What is going on, Knick of Time family? It's your boy, the Latin assassin, Lee Escobedo, live and direct from Dallas, Texas, here with my sister, Ebony, aka the Mad Knit fan. And boy, do we have a special guest today. I know all of Knit's Twitter is hyped to talk about the 50th pick in this year's NBA draft, a second round steal, perhaps. And who better to talk about under the table prospects, not very well known prospects, than someone who is considered an expert in the draft, not just European talent, but the NBA talent at all. He's one of the brightest minds that I've been following since I joined Twitter a couple of years ago. Someone who also stands on principles and justice in the international scene. I want to introduce my main man, live and direct from the Netherlands, Ersin Demir, to talk some Knicks basketball. Brother, love to have you here. Welcome to the show. Please let the fans know, introduce yourself, a little bit of your background.
Thanks for the warm welcome, man. And I'm hyped to do the show with you too. And when I started following the NBA, I started following the Knicks. That was my team. But yeah, again, I'm not from America, so it's not really my team. Yeah, I'm not tied to a city, so I can easily change. That's the positive of being foreign. But yeah, I'm rooting for the Knicks big time. I've seen the bad years, and now the good years are coming. I think next year the Knicks are going to be the one seed in the East. That's not being me being a homer, but. The East is wide open with Halliburton injured, Lillard injured, Tatum injured. It should be the next season. Yeah, the 50th pick is not going to have that much of an impact, but yeah, you can always add an extra rotational player. I think that's the Knicks' biggest need right now. Getting rid of this 8 player rotations that doesn't make any sense.
I know everybody's glad to hear that, as am I. Talking about the Knicks, you mentioned that you expect us to be the number one seed next year. That's a sentiment that I very much agree with you. With the major injuries to both Jason Tatum and Tyrese Halliburton, you have to imagine Boston, Indiana will slip some in the standings, maybe even out of a top five with New York and Cleveland and Orlando in a fight for first. Of those teams, the Knicks have the most experience and also probably have the best roster. We come into this draft. Ersin, what do you think the
Yeah.
Knicks should be looking for archetypal in terms of player profile with the 50th pick?
Well, two things that I would do. I would go for either a center, add some more depth there because yeah, Mitch Robinson is injured and I hope he stays healthy next year. But Carl Anthony Towns, don't think you have to push him for 82 games to take away some minutes there. And the second one is one of these dynamic, taller ball handlers to support Jalen Brunson and to support Miles McBride in the backcourt. I think that's the two glaring needs. I think in terms of wings, Pacom Dadier is going to have a good chance with the new coach, hopefully. I think he's one of the guys that should stick around. But outside of that, yeah, the end of the depth guy, end of the bench guy seems interchangeable, whether it's in free agency. And I know, yeah, with the second apron, you don't have a lot of options to take, and you don't want to trade the guys that you have right now. So the Knicks are kind of stuck with this team, and they have to add and try to expand that rotation and take away as many minutes as they can from their starting guys. Whether it's 3 or 4, that's enough. But pushing guys for 80 games for 40 minutes a night, yeah, that shouldn't really be something
I've
to
heard
expect.
commentary across not just Knicks Twitter, but the reporters who are covering the Knicks about the possibility of a Knicks searching for a center. And they've also worked out a few centers. I heard they worked out Auburn's Dylan Cardwell already for the Knicks. There's been interest around Clifford Amururi, I think is how you pronounce his
Yeah.
name, who played for Alabama last year. I look at the Knicks roster and I say, we got Hot Porty, we got Karl Anthony Towns, who could start at center, and we have Mitchell Robinson. We already got three centers there. And this question I'm going to ask, start with Urson, and then I'm moving to Ebony. If we do add a center, what skill set do you think that center needs to possess? Should it be a similar carbon copy of Mitch, or is there a different attribute you think we should add at the center position to fully enhance our roster offensively and defensively? I'll start with you, Urson.
Mm. I think it's tied to the next coach, and I'm thinking that the new next coach is going to focus on various sets, versatility in the sets that they can run. And the NBA is a pick and roll heavy game, and one of the glaring needs for the Knicks is a well screening five. I think screening is the biggest trait that the new five has to have. I like Cardwell a lot for that reason. A big, strong body who doesn't really have to produce, but he makes a difference and makes the game easier for the rest with his screening. screening inside, screening outside, a little bit of passing out of rolls from screens, but more so a constant screener. I think the screening is a factor that really kind of get in the Knicks' way because Towns is not really a good screener in my opinion. He's more of a perimeter option. He want to play five out or four out at worst. And maybe you can change with some little box and one stuff or something like that. Or maybe you move from little inside out games with post entry passes. I don't think Mitch Robinson is that good at doing that. He didn't really have the chance to do that. And you can add some more versatility to the five with some more screening and passing out of these plays. I like that you mentioned Dylan Cartwell because that's what one of my favorites at the 50. And I think he's going to be there. And one of the reasons that Auburn was so good, and one of the reasons, that their guy almost won National Player of the Year because this guy is doing the dirty work. The Knicks kind of need that garbage man at the five. And not to talk disrespectful, but yeah, that's eventually the role that they have feast of garbage points and screen and play hard for 10 minutes and try not to pick up as many fouls. I think the role is simple. But finding these guys is harder than it looks because it's the most interchangeable position. But yeah, it's if we have a guy like that, you won't let him go. For example, Dwight Powell from the Dallas Mavericks, he's there for what, 10 plus years? You need a guy like
Facts.
him.
Ebony?
Yeah, I kind of agree with some of the stuff. I hope again that our team that we have now is working on the flaws in their games. I'm really hoping that to help. But through the draft, I would like two-way, either two-way center, two-way guard. You have to be able to compete on both ends no matter what for me. I think if we have a Mitch like, then it would be cool to have somebody that can, like mention, set screens, but also you step out and shoot to have a kind of balance, a balance of the defensive rim dirty work kind of center, and also somebody who can stretch the floor a little bit so you can throw different looks at teams. I'm cool with that. A young big that can also has touch but also has the big men qualities. I know I don't know much about these guys, but I seen a Vladislav Golding mentioned. What does he look like? I know that he's very fiery, like and has intensity, has some touch that from what I seen in the little highlight reels that I was watching, and he's 7'1". Also can protect the rim type of vibe. Something like that. Pick a play. Either way, whichever way they go, they have to be able to be two-way. That's all I mean. Just fundamentally
Yeah.
sound. That's all I'm looking for. Somebody when the number is called, you can produce. So yeah, I seen was it Golden and somebody else? I'm not sure. Maybe you
Yeah.
can tell
From
me
from
about
Michigan.
Amari Williams also. I seen somebody that could be a sleeper there late at the round. But for me, he looked like he can move up, score off the dribble, things of that nature, spot up. But he's very left hand dominant. Even in the highlight reels, you see that he's left-handed
True.
dominant. What does that right hand look like for me, and things of that nature? Also they questioned about his I seen they questioned about his decision making. Great passer, but sometimes he shouldn't make the passes type of vibes. Um, but they believe that his game can that I read that his game can transfer a little bit on an NBA level. So
What do you think about those names,
yeah,
Ersin?
I 100% agree. I like Amari Williams the most of the guys that you mentioned. And
okay.
yeah, you're right. He doesn't have a right hand at all. Even if he has a right angle to finish with his right, he goes to his left, goes to a tougher finish. And yeah, in the NBA, that's inexcusable because you're taking away your one option to score and make it easy for the offensive scouting report to say, okay, push this guy's right hand. You all have to do is force him right, and then you're done. And as a passer, yeah, he overextended a little with his passing, but he's a good angle creator. I think that's the beginning. And he played at the mid-major before he got to Kentucky. And what I like about these fives is if they can create angles to score or to pass, to be that threat with post-entry passes, they don't even have to stretch the floor, in my opinion. If they can, utilize with their post-up threat, and Jalen Brunson is a post-up playmaker and scorer. And the Knicks
True.
can use post-ups a lot and make his life easier if they have some extra options. And not to play a traditional game with post-up offensive players, but the gravity is enough. And that's why I like a guy like Dylan Cartwell. He can use his body as gravity to either make the
Okay.
extra pass and pass out of help defenders coming in, or with Amari Williams, who's more of a proven playmaker to do the same thing. But yeah, with him, he doesn't have gravity because he's one and dominant. You take away his left arm and then it's done. And at the
Okay.
50th pick, you can't buy a Ferrari for a dollar, and that's what basically the price that you're paying with the 50th pick, right? So these guys have flaws, and the most vital thing here is how much Rover still are you buying, and I think the Knicks are very good at that. They bought in low
Yeah.
with Miles McBride. He developed in the G League for 2, 3 years. You have a rotational level player. I like Uporti as well. He brought in this intensity at as one the NBA's Mr. Irrelevant. How do you call it in NFL? you're picking some you're picking extra options. I think one of the best things that helped me a lot with my draft stuff was Joe Mazzulla's interview when he won the title with Boston. He said we're
Yeah.
improving the margins for error. That's my only goal when I work out these guys, improve the margin for errors. And with the 50th pick, if you could take away 5 minutes of your starters and bring in some sustainable defensive rating and the offense keeps around, that's enough. It's all about the margin
Yeah.
for error. And these fives, these skilled fives, skill will always prevail. That's my go-to skill. And that's why I like Amari the most of the guys that you mentioned. Because of
Okay.
Golden is more of a screen and dive, screen and roll five with an inside finishing game. He can shoot, but Mitchell Robinson shoots empty gyms as well, and I have not seen him shoot NBA threes. So, and a guy like Mark Williams from the Hornets, he shot what 20 of 25 at the combine. I haven't even seen one shoot three threes in the NBA. These guys can shoot, but in an empty gym, yeah, they are pros. They all
Yeah.
can shoot, but how much is
Okay.
sustainable? And Nick's and Mitch's dominance is inside the paint, and I think for the 50th pick, you have to add some more depth for his minutes. So you're buying interior dominance. So I think the floor station is not necessary, but the two-way play is more so. Yeah, he has to make his rotations. He has to switch a little bit on the perimeter, but yeah, not too much. And if he can do that, you're never gonna find a guy like that at 50. So it's always give and take. And it's not me saying you have to settle for bad, but you have to settle for the more rovers to that you get. I like Amari Williams. That was one of the names I had in mind as well, but I'm glad that you brought him up because in terms of skill, he's the best option. But in terms of toughness, I like Dylan Cardwell for the Knicks. And they're both well in reach at 50.
But can I ask you real quick because Precious is probably out the door, so we're definitely gonna need another big, another maybe combo big that can be
Yeah.
power forward center. You could slide in between, a hybrid kind of guy, if we can. Like what I seen Johnny is it Johnny Broom, from was it
Mm,
Auburn? Is it Auburn?
yeah. That would have
Auburn?
been my cup of tea because he's productive in college because it was his show. And in the NBA, it's never going to be his show. It's
Mm-hmm.
more so how much can you scale a guy sort of roll down. And I would rather take a guy who's already playing in such a role than someone who's productive and then in the NBA, if he scores 5 points and tries to force his way, he's on the bench. So that's always the danger. But yeah, John Broom is going to play in the NBA but for the Knicks, I don't think that's the best context because yeah, he doesn't really have the size to be a five. He has the strength, but at 6'8", 6'9" is tough. And with Precious,
What is his defense like?
sorry, the defense, yeah, it's
Yeah,
it's
his
team
defense.
based. Auburn was a very strong team defense, and Caldwell was the garbage man who did the dirty work. And for
Okay.
him, a guy like that having next to him makes it easier. It's just like, for example, Jared Allen. He has Evan Mobley, he's one of the best defenders in the league at that position. It makes his life easy because he takes away some of the guys' next flaws next to him. I think these are the margins that you look for, and that's why a role player should always stick to a role player. And I'm not favorable of drafting these productive players at 50, unless you're talking about guards, of course, whose role is more to score rather than a
Mm.
five. A five's game is not to score in today's game anymore, unfortunately.
Okay. Thank you.
I have a question that both of y'all brought up that I didn't want to be like ESPN and gloss over. This is a show about X's and O's and ball talk, so I want to have a conversation on ball talk. Both of you mentioned a center who can set strings and sets many strings. We really didn't see that employed by the Knicks until the playoffs. Once we got into the playoffs, you saw Tom Thibodeau incorporate more dribble handoffs or flares or double drag screens, specifically in the series against Boston. Which of these big guys that you mentioned do you think would be the best at exhibiting more dribble handoff opportunities to get guys, whether it be Pacome Dadiot or OG Anunoby or Mikal Bridges, easier catch and shoot opportunities and pull up opportunities from the perimeter? Is there a big that you think would be best suited at that? And is that to Ebony after Ersin answers? How big of a priority is that in a center and what you're looking for the type of draft prospect you want to bring in?
Hmm. If you have Hickporty already, it should be a guy different than him. I like Cardwell, but in terms of if you're gonna make plays out of handoffs, he's not the best option because
Okay.
he has zero to no gravity outside of the paint. Why would a team try to focus on him? Because they know he's gonna hand off the ball already, and they can, hard edge or even blitz the ball handler after that. So that doesn't really make sense. Amari is skilled, but yeah, he has one hand. And not to talk about those two guys, but there should be someone who can create his own offense to a certain degree. And the combination of screening and faking and going to the rim, that more of that pop threat, that's vital. And he doesn't really have to be a shooter. You should always be always looking to make the extra pass as well. It's always about collapsing the defense. And at 50, there's multiple ways to go. And if I look at what Hikpori brings, I would rather bet on him and try to defer to another type of role at 50 because whether which guy you bring in is they are going to have the most similarities, and center is the most interchangeable position. So the Knicks should really look for something that they don't find in him, some more extra bodies inside the arc.
Where does center setting ball screens rank for you, Ebony? Is something that we were missing maybe outside of Mitchell Robinson last season?
It's big. It's big because again, you see what Mitch did for Jalen Brunson a lot of times, giving him clean, clear looks. Take the pressure right off of having to for them to create all the time. So yeah, that's huge. You sense I like my big men to be big, meaning the big roles they have to rebound and again we have that in Mitchell Robinson. So I still need that, but I would like also just a fundamentally sound big, meaning you can make a mid range. You can step out every once in a while. Just somebody that can do a lot good, not necessarily elite just yet, because you can work with that.
Hmm.
That's what I'm looking for. So yeah, it has to be big. It has to be. You saw what the picks did for on us. How we just died on picks and people got crazy looks. It started domino effect. So that's huge, especially if we don't have the ball handlers that we need besides maybe Brunson. We asked for OG and Mikhail to work on their handle this offseason. I know that was one of the things I asked them to work on. So yeah, I would like my the centers to have set real big screens because we don't have that many ball handlers like that.
I think about watching the finals and not so much Chet, but definitely Isaiah Hartenstein for the Thunder and Miles Turner for the Pacers. So much of Indiana's offense started with that initial string on the the ball string on the perimeter to open up their guards for opportunities. We saw when Neesmith hitting a lot of open looks off of Turner strings, and then in Oklahoma City, you had just about everybody benefit off of Isaiah Hartenstein and his playmaking from that position as well. Is there someone that's a big, in your opinion, Ersin, that has like Hartenstein, where he comes in maybe with a specific skill set, but has ceiling to get better in certain areas? Which of the bids do you think has the most untapped potential in that regard?
Hmm. I'm looking for these hyper athletic vibes instead. What I like is this guy is not gonna be around 50 most likely. This guy is from Penn State, Yannick Konan. I like him a lot. He's more of a vertical lob threat than really an interior presence. But with the Knicks' guard play, that's the type of guy that you need as well. In terms of, screening, rolling, and then handing the ball over. It's really an easy game and showing reliable touch around the rim with both hands. And these fundamentals must-haves, just like, for example, what the Gasol brothers said. They always keep the ball high no
Oh,
matter what. On offensive rebounds, on anything. You don't want to get hacked. Because with Robinson, you don't get reliable free throw shooting. With the average five that you're going to have on your bench, you're not going to get reliable free throw shooting. So to counter against that, Yannick Konan Niederhauser, I like him a lot. I think he's from Switzerland, but he played college basketball for 3, 4 years, and he was at Penn State. And he's one of the names that's really rising on boards because of the good summer that he had. He was good at the G League Elite Camp and now at the NBA Draft Combine. He has had the same, impression for these scouts against his own peers, against the guys that he's competing with for these contracts. I think he's going to go between 25 and 40, but let's say something happens and the Knicks trade upwards If they trade up for another guy, that's the type of player that I'm prioritizing. He's more so of that long, wiry, athletic 7 footers rather than physical. I think Hartenstein is the physical gifts that he's kind of both. More of an interior presence, but he has also the foot speed to play on the perimeter with these, you carry the ball half court, he's making a play with his screening and he immediately keep the ball moving. That hub, that traditional hub type of play. Yeah, for the Knicks it was big. They developed him and they couldn't pay him because of they had to pay other guys. Otherwise, his dynamic, addition to the game at the 5 really changed the Knicks' outcome. Not having that anymore. And those are the types of improvement to the margin that you see because the guy that you bring on 50 is not going to take away Townsend's minutes or Robinson's minutes. It's just, improving the Knicks for these 10 minutes. Because whenever the Knicks got a run and they bench some guys against the Pacers, then they get these points back easily. I think these are the scenarios that you're trying to cover here.
I want to transition to the next section with a question for both of y'all. Again, starting with Ersin first. Do you think the Knicks should prioritize a home run swing, going for someone who maybe is a little bit raw, has a lot of upside, could potentially even not be in the rotation next year, but gain reps in the G League with the
Mm,
Westchester Knicks? Or should they
no.
go safe? And I'm asked this question built around two options that the Knicks would select on the wing, one being the safe option in Micah Peavy and the other being the home run option in Dink Pate. I don't know how much experience you had scouting those two guys. I had the luxury. I live here in Dallas. I go to a lot of high school basketball games. Got the chance to watch both Peavy and Pate, not just in games, but in empty gyms coaching.
Yeah.
Pate's a member of the AAU team that I help out with. So I've seen him up close and personal a lot. Which one of those players or that art type should the Knicks target? Should it be a big upside player or more safe pick?
Nah, more safe pick. I think the upside player is Dadier. I think that's the player that the Knicks should invest in. And you can only give so much developmental minutes. You can, bet on multiple horses, but you're never going to get 100% outcome. And with Dadier, with the rookie skilled contract, you're kind of forced to invest in him if you're going to make the most out of him. I would go for a safer role. I like PV, and I think his dad is a coach as well, right? And you can see that in his game when I wrote about him. He's fundamentally so sound. I think that's why he was such a good defender in college. And at Georgetown, I think he didn't really care anymore later on in the season. He kind of looked passive because of it was a bad team and even if they win a game, it was hopeless. And his game improved there because of at TCU was kind of stuck in a role where his shooting was the only part where he could really stand out. But his whole defensive package as a team defender, as a switchable defender, and as a volume shooter was really put on display at Georgetown, and he kind of makes some extra plays off the dribble as well. I would go for a guy like Peavy to add some more wing depth, reliable shooting that you need in the first quarter between 8 minutes to 8 and until the break when the Knicks should rest some of the guys where they give up a lot of points. That's a type of insurance policy that you need for with guys like PV. I like PV a lot. Yeah, man, that the Dallas area is producing a lot of pros, man, especially that school, what Duncanville it's called. It's
A
crazy,
hundred.
man.
That's right. They're up. 100%. Yeah. The reason Peavy's the son of the coach of Duncanville, and he won, I think, 5 total state championships. Peavy, I believe, was a part of 3 of them. His son before he went to TCU. The thing that worries me about Peavy is his shooting. I know in volume he had some decent stretches, and we saw year over year growth. But I don't know if I can depend on him as an NBA level shooter in the type of situations he would be getting the corners to help us immediate. That might be more of a long term thing, which is why I tend to disagree with you. Which no problem. I like
Yeah,
the more upswing in Dink Pate, someone who's more athletic, who I think has some upside after 2 years with the G League. Because to me, we lack athleticism and pure shooting. And Peavy to me is not an athlete or a pure shooter. He's a good athlete, but he's not a great athlete like Dink. So I tend to veer away from the safe picks because those picks, I think we've had enough of those type of guys. We've had a lot of high floor, low ceiling. I think the Knicks should be trying to delegate to try to get a few of those high ceiling guys.
yeah, swing
As I
for the
agree with
fences.
you, but Tom Dadia definitely another high ceiling.
I
I
like Dink a lot.
I definitely agree with him with Combe. I'm expecting to see something next season. I thought when we drafted him, it reminded me of Denver drafting like Michael Porter Jr. for me. That's the kind of it can be like he showed flashes to me that even as a youth right now that he has some skills. He has some fun. He's pretty fundamentally sound. What surprised me was his defense. He showed some defensive flashes. I just think he has to get the strength, and the game has to slow down for him. But I think he's a gem. I really do. I think he becomes a gem for us. But if scoring wise, I did get to see watch some PV highlight tapes and reels and some scout reports on him. You talking about scorers. It was I seen kept seeing Ryan Nimhart's name as a scorer, and also somebody saying that they don't see many people who play make like him on this level now. That was actually an NBA.com article, so that it kind of stuck out for me. Very, he looks like a shooter, a very good shooter. Handle, that I don't, and I think he's very small though. He's just like his brother. They're not very big, but you see what his brother does. So, you know,
Fact.
that was somebody that I saw. It was also another guy that I wanted to ask you about that was pretty I know Fritz talks about Kobe all the time, and it was another guy from Kentucky, I believe. I can't remember his name. Jeez.
The center,
No,
Kobe Bryant.
no, Duke. It was not
I mean, Zion James.
Kentucky. It was Duke, another shooter. Like he's a big shooter, and he was from the tape that I watched. He was a pure shooter. So if either or
Yeah,
for me,
maybe
somebody that
Tyrese Proctor.
yes, there we go. That's
Yeah,
that's who exactly what it. For me, it's either if you're not gonna get somebody that's well round out player, you have to go either or elite kind of vibes.
Yeah,
So
agreed.
if you want to go elite lockdown defender, I'm cool with that and try to work on his offensive game too. If you want to go elite sharpshooter on some Novak 2.0, or well, more than Novak 2.0, because like you mentioned, we need that long athletic wing, somebody that also can get their bucket and knows how to get their bucket without Jalen Brunson so much having to give it to them kind of vibes. So these shooters that I saw, I like Tyrese Proctor a lot from what I saw. I'm not very familiar, maybe, but he looked again like a fundamentally sound player, good ball handler, can read it seem like he can make his own shot and readjust on his shot. He doesn't have to be set. I don't know, but like I said, I don't know much about it. I'm going off the tapes and what I
yeah.
read off of.
What do you think, Ersin?
Nah, I don't really like Proctor that much in that type of role because when he entered Duke, he was a covered the top 10 pick in that draft, and the next year he was as well. And Duke wasn't good when he was so ball dominant. In his first year, he was ball dominant, and the biggest context is he came from Australia. He struggled to translate to college, translate to the higher level of athleticism, to be more precise. And as a pure point for Duke, Duke wasn't good, and he struggled. It was a crazy stat that he missed his first 33s or something like that in his freshman year. It's something crazy like that.
Wow.
But he managed to adjust and he embraced a smaller role in the third year when the team built around Cooper Flag and then Kan Knoepel took the number two role and he settled for his role as a volume shooter. And in a smaller portion, that's where he stood out. But the dangerous part with these players who heat up at the end of the season is at the end of the season, most of the people are watching. They're going to see that and not going to see the context before. I like Tyrese Proctor, but there's a guy like him in every class. There's not really a diversifying skill, in my opinion, to take him,
Mhm.
justifying and giving him minutes. For example, you mentioned Dink Pate. Dink Pate is a guy that I would gladly swing for the fences on because you know what he brings. And his high school film is prevailing, and he went to the G League Ignite. And let's say they didn't close that team. His NBA career would be different. He would be a top 10 pick right now in that conversation. He went to Mexico. He bet on showing how good he can score, but that was not a good decision. He should show how good his guard play was. And that's not something that was successful this year for him, but the context is bad for him. And that's why I would bet on a guy like that. Proctor was on a winning team, just like guys like Walter Clayton. He may succeed in NBA, but it's all about the championship context. Let's say he plays for a team that's eliminated in the Sweet 16 or something like that, he's not getting the same buzz. So that's why it's dangerous to always go for the recency bias, but also try to tap in the skill. I think having elite skills is good. If you have one skill, it should be elite. But in the NBA, most players stick around if they have multiple skills to hang their head on. especially when you're a guard or a wing. Then you should be that type of, you know, the type of how you Swiss Army knife, how you say it like that. That's the only
Yeah.
chance
Hmm.
that you have to succeed. Because if you're a great shooter like Kobe Bryant, you're not going to succeed because of if your shot doesn't fall, what else do you do? In this case, it's not much. And the Knicks are always, focusing on Bronson. He's their primary engine, and Carl Anthony Towns. And then your starters, your four guys. Those are your main guys. And you have to help them improve the margins, for their errors. Bridges can have, sorry, yeah, Bridges can have a bad game, for example, like that. Or Towns can have a bad game. Who else is going to step up and close the gap? I think those are the margins that you look for. And if you go going for a one-dimensional player, yeah, it's risky. And the Knicks took these risks, and Thibodeau saw that it didn't work, so he pushed these guys to play 40 minutes. But do you want that again? Do you want to look at the top 10, player minutes in the NBA and see the Knicks starting
No,
lineup there? It's not good.
no.
It's not sustainable. Even if you go to the NBA Finals, these guys are worn out, man, and it's not really it's not really helping the team to. You have to expand the minutes, and I think that's the biggest goal. And that's why I would rather, a guy like PV brings the dimensional skills of the reliable team defense and some shooting. But yeah, he's never going to bring extra, just like you said. But a guy like Dink Pate, who has shown at the high school scene that he is an all-round player, an all-round guard, that's the type of bet that you can make. I was high on Dink Pate as well until I really watched a lot of his tape from Mexico City. I was like, yeah, he doesn't get any better in 2 years. How do you manage that? It's almost like that. It may sound unfair, but that's the nature of the NBA because yeah,
Yep.
50, 60 players go out and 50, 60 players go in. It's more so a yeah survival of the fittest almost, especially when you're fighting for contracts.
When I get a little bit nervous anytime I hear about the Knicks being interested in a Duke guard because it gives me shades of Trevor Keels. I get a little bit a little bit nervous. He's probably the
Yeah,
one really terrible Knicks draft pick in the Leon Rose, Walt Perrin era. I just don't know what the hell was going on when we targeted him. It didn't make any sense. Ersin, got a question for you. Do you think the Knicks are going to move up in this draft to get maybe higher in the second round, potentially in the first round? And if they did, who are some players you think they would be targeting to do so? And if you decide to do it, I would love to hear Ebony's thoughts on whether she thinks the Knicks should have that mentality.
no, I think it's realistic because buying second round picks is easier nowadays. Some teams are stockpiling them and never using them, so trading up should be 35 to 40, something like that. I would target Bryce Williams from Nebraska. I like him a lot. Fifth year senior, strong, tall guard. He's more of an all-round player, but I like how he attacks the angles. Good at, recognizing footworks and such a down and slasher with strength and a little bit with speed. A crafty scorer. That's the type of guy that I would bet on. Add some more, not Miles McBride, because Miles McBride is more of a point of attack defender rather than what he is now. He expanded his offensive game, but with Bryce Williams, it's the other way around. You're adding some more offensive dynamic scoring, more of the microwave scoring package. And they brought in some fillers to the rotation, and eventually, when they have a good season, you have to pay them. And the Knicks are not in a position to pay anyone, so they need to have these
Sure.
cheap contracts, and maybe give them a Miles McBride type of contract, where they give him 3 or 4% of the cap, and that's it. You can't demand more than
Right.
that for an end of the bench role. And I think the end of the bench is so much fun because it's so interchangeable. You get two new players, and maybe next year you lose some, and that's why hitting on these second round picks is so vital, or hitting on your two-way contracts is so essential to keep your rotation even sustainable for long stretches of games. And that's where the Knicks lost, unfortunately. And that's where if they move up, they have some more options. But you're always going to get a player with flaws because the Knicks can't really bet on swinging for the fences. At least I wouldn't do that because you have Dadier. I wouldn't bet on him as the long-term type of developmental piece. And bring in some roles just to fill in the rotation. I think that's the most goal. I think the 50th pick is not the 60th pick. No one cares about the 50th pick, and rightfully so. I wouldn't either if I were a Knicks fan. Why would I? The starting five is already declared. You're gonna see him play maybe 5 minutes a game at best, or else he's gonna play for Westchester. But I'm dissecting. But again, it's more so if they move up, I would go for certain skill sets to add to this group. And I think scoring from the guard position is a must.
Mm. Ebony, should they move up or stay where they are?
If the chance presents itself, and we can, it's a good deal. I'm pretty sure they will. One thing that I noticed about this front office is they're gonna check, even if they might not want to make the deal, but it seems like they do their due diligence on on what's going on. Let me see what we can get type vibes. What you talking about? So if it happens, it happens. I wouldn't. I kind of get the notion that they thought that we should have went further, that it might have been a coaching issue, so they might just really want to run it back, and show up the end of the bench. I know we can't keep, like mentioned, we can't keep everybody or at the end of the bench, the campaigns, the pressure. We can't keep everybody. We know that somebody's not going, or maybe everybody. We don't know. But if it presents itself and it makes sense, and they have somebody in mind that they really want, yeah, I could see them doing that. One thing that we've done well is drafting these positions. It's kind of been shaky when we've had lottery picks, but when we get these type of picks, we pretty much have done pretty well with them. You look at Mitch, you look at Miles McBride. We've done decent. And then you look at the type of draft picks we had last year. I thought that was a good draft we had, a quiet kind of draft, and it came out of nowhere. So I don't put anything past this front office, because just last draft we thought it was going to be a quiet one, and it wasn't all that quiet for us. So I just expect the unexpected when it comes to Leon in this front office, because they kind of pull they don't mention much, and they kind of move in silence type of vibe. So
That's an excellent point and brought me to my next one too. So great setup, Ebony. Ersin, what are your thoughts on the four rookies? We wanted to have you on last year. Unfortunately, weren't able to do it to give your in-depth analysis on the four guys, and Knicks took McCullough, Hotporty, Kolek, and Dadier. What are your thoughts on those four? If you want to rank them in terms of who you think has the highest likelihood of joining the rotation next year and who you think has the highest potential.
That is number one, and there's a big gap after that. I was
Wow.
high on McCullough because
Wow.
of his defensive skill, but the injury was always a risk that you took. And of course, the injury, yeah, it didn't really help him. But that, yeah, is, for my opinion, is the best one. I think Tyler Kolek is it's easy to fall in love with the playmaking skill and the down and slashing, but the defensive end is where I always had my worries with him. Is he an NBA type of player that you can keep on the floor? He can, impact the game for a short amount of time. But if teams try to hunt him down, they're going to succeed. Do you want to keep a role player like that on the floor? Let's say you have your star who is the defensive liability. That's okay. You can work around that. And it's easier to say goodbye to role players that you have to facilitate to even keep them on the floor. And Hupori is his role is the most expendable on the team. That may sound unfair, but yeah, that's his role. He's not gonna be an impactful player. He's gonna be a utility player and a supportive player. I like that day a lot because I watched him play. I think 3 years ago for the first time, and back then, his physical appearance was always the same. He's kind of a man child who started to grow in his frame when he went to the NBA. I think he's still growing into his frame because of, yeah. If you look at his face and his body, he's not. He looks like a kid, but he's built like a grown man. So I think his physical investment, that's the biggest one for the Knicks. He's gonna get accustomed to his body, and then the game is gonna open up for him. He has a lot of long-term potential.
yeah.
And that's the positive with these French prospects because yeah, most of these guys are getting drafted later, and you have the cheap opportunity to buy in. And the Knicks can afford to invest in him because what do you lose? You have a late first round pick on a rookie skilled contract who has shown flash in his rookie year. He can get some spot minutes in year two, but he shouldn't play 30 minutes. That would be crazy if he takes that much of these minutes. That's not realistic either. It's not good to put him in a situation like that. But gradually let him grow into a role, just like McBride, because McBride, how they handled him was the best one. They kept him in the G League, kept him in the G League, give him some minutes. This is what you need to work on, go back. And the same thing with Dadier. I think he embraces the idea because If a kid like that goes to New York, you want to stay in New York, man. Why would you want to leave?
What skill set that we haven't seen from Dadier do you think can be worked on and fast tracked the most? We know he has a shooting ability. We've seen some flashes of defense on the perimeter and switchability. What other elements of his game do you
That
think?
winning originator. His handles are improving. He has the body to get downhill on, on footwork, burst, but also physicality. That, that slasher slash, advantage creator, the angle creators. He, it's kind of what you want Mikal Bridges to be a little bit, but also OG Anunoby. But they are not consistent on that end. He can bring the extra skill set on that end, where he's wing initiating, can get him downhill and be a threat there as a scorer or as a passer. Not really jump stop and then go for a higher deal. His game is all about substance. I think his game is not sexy, but his game is effective. But he has to grow into his body and try to master his athleticism. He's still, that type of freshman that you bring in, that type of kid that needs to grow into his body, get stronger. And the Knicks do that when they took him. And I think they're gonna recognize how valuable he can be if they utilize him well. And I was happy that how his rookie year went. He got some flashes to show, and he didn't really was thrown into the lion's cage, from go save us. Why would you? You're gonna destroy a prospect if you do that, especially in New York, because yeah, Knicks fans are not patient. Despite of the 50 years plus, sorry to repeat, I'm not gonna rub it in, but yeah, the Knicks fans should be patient. But now the Knicks fans are patient because they've seen what Leon Rose did in the first couple of years, and now you can compete for 3 years in a row. Because let's be honest, this season was title contention. Last season should have been as well, and next season is gonna be there as well. You're in win now mode, and improving the margins with these type of games on your bench is a good thing. If the Knicks can grab an upside swing in the second round and they go for it, go for it. But I would go, for some more addition to the rotation. And I think Dadier is the most valuable player that they took last year.
Ebony, you got to be loving this commentary because this lines up almost exactly what you've been saying all season, both about Tyler
Yeah.
College and about Patom Dadier. Eb, what are one or two skill sets that you hope Patom Dadier refines this offseason and brings to the rotation piece next year?
Like you mentioned, just growing into his body. And I remember, I tell you, I speak about this all the time because it stood out to me. He has the when he was able to play, he had the smaller. Who do he have? I forgot his name from Boston, the guard, the backup guard. He had him
Pritchard?
on. Yeah, Pritchard. I couldn't remember. I was about to call him
Yeah.
Proctor because we were talking about Tyrese. Okay, Pritchard, yes, he had Pritchard on him. So he sees him, he does the right thing. He sees the smaller play on him, so he posts him up, which was the right call. But he doesn't move him. He goes nowhere. So if anything, a lot of times he was able to get bumped off, play good defense, but they were able to negate it because they, able to use the grown man strength, I guess, and get to their spots. So yeah, just to work on his strength, and watch film because he's to me, I agree everything Ersin said. I believe he's our gym. Just give him some film, let the game slow down, and get the strength together. I think we see all his skills come together. Because again, a lot of times it was just them pump. He would make good moves, and they would bump him off bump him off his path, or he'll be play good defense, and they'll just bump him enough to get space. But he's in front. And another thing that I noticed a lot that I liked a lot from him when I saw, especially in the summer league, was he can pass. He has vision. He can, he's a willing passer type of vibe. So I just think his strength and tons of film, strength and get in there and tons of film. He has the tools. With Kolick, defense and film. He has to work on that end. He has to work on making it difficult for people, some type of resistance. Again, I don't think he's ever going to be all NBA defender type, but just resistance, learning good team defense, just learning positions and angles. He'll be okay, I believe. Hagporty, again, I think Ersin mentioned, he's speaking a lot how I felt about these the
Yep,
rookies.
he sure is.
I think Hagporty is good. I think he's raw. I think he's more of an offensive center. I think the couple blocks kind of vibes kind of blinded folks into thinking he's this lockdown defender just yet, but I'm not too sold on that. Um, I think he's a better offensive guard, and he has to work. I mean, offensive big, he has to work more on the smaller things, the dirty work type of vibes. That's what I'm getting. I would like to see him, but I think that just comes for time too, and I think he's in the perfect spot to just learn at a good pace too. Also, all our rookies are in good spots where they can just learn. I think next year we'll call on them a lot more. I still believe that they're our end of the bench pieces.
Excellent
Yeah,
analysis.
100%.
Both sides, sis. All right, Erson, give us your top three options for the Knicks at pick number 50, or if they move up, who are three
Okay.
guys you think are the best options for the New York Knicks to consider?
The first one is from Tennessee, Jemai Meshack. 6'4" guard. He's simply, in my opinion, the best perimeter defender in college. I wrote about him earlier today. When I was watching, I was like, this crazy man. But this is a guy who California born and California guards are creative, but he accepted his fate as in his role. And Tennessee is a defensive minded team with two players running their offensive show basically. With Connect last year, Chesley this year, and with Zakai Ziegler being the second guy for them, their guard. You know, his footwork, how he recognizes angles, how he moves his hips, makes him so good in the point of attack, in the pick and roll, and out of closeouts is crazy, man. He brings the total defensive package, but the offense might need some time to pan out. This is the type of guy that you thought McCullough was going to be for the Knicks before the injuries really ruined his career. I like him a lot at 50. I think he can even be signed on Exhibit 10. He's not getting a lot of draft buzz, but that's an underrated name, that not a lot of people are talking about, despite Tennessee being in the SEC and he being an all the SEC defender. So that's one. The second one is we already talked about him. I think if we have to take a guy like Dylan Cardwell, that's another guy that I liked because of the level of substance, because of the big body, the garbage man type of game. This is a guy that you can get at 50. I think he's going to have some more fans in NBA front of us than the draft Twitter are talking about. His coach at Auburn, he speaks very highly of him, saying that he's an NBA player even before the season because of how he completed his team. And with Cardwell, he's going to make guys around him better, but he's not going to be the most productive player. He can improve the margin with his rebounding and with his play finishing, but outside of that, yeah, it's basically it's a short sentence with him. And the third one is I'm kind of sticking with Bryce Williams because of the experience that he brings, and the Knicks are going to value experience because of the stage of where their team is. They are going to win now. You're not going to bet on a rookie or a sophomore. That doesn't make sense. You have to go with all the players, and the win for the older players is they get to their second contract faster.
Hmm.
So they are more, entitled to get their rotational role and then sign the second contract. It's similar to Miles McBride, 3-4% of the cap. But Bryce Williams brings that next offensive dynamic guard off the bench. You have Campaign, but Campaign is an expensive player if he has a good season because of the pedigree, because of the previous experience. And Bryce Williams, yeah, in the Big Ten at Nebraska, he was their main guy. What I liked about him, he was the number one team on the scouting report, number one player on the scouting report. But his way to attack a defender's footwork, find angles, use the physicality and touch around the rim to score, and some, yeah, not reliable 3-point shooting, but yeah, at that level, you're not going to get reliable 3-point shooting at pick 50. He, adds a more offensive dynamic to this team. A microwave scorer that people like to say. These are the three players that I would go for if I were the Knicks. All, experienced players with a certain skill set, but with more than one skill. The best chance to fight their way into a rotation. I think that's the best thing that you should expect. Saying that you're going to get a start at pick number 50, yeah, that's not realistic, man. Especially in a class like this. All of the good guys already went back to college, man, because of NIL. So the pool is basically a lot of fifth year seniors right now of eligibility. And the guys that are left, yeah, it's a small group.
Ersin, what a true honor to have you on. In fact, this has been extremely entertaining for me because Ebony of all of us probably knows the most about ball. So to have her and you conversating about ball screens and fits has been a dream of mine just as a listener and enjoyer. I appreciate both of y'all very much for being on the show today. Please, Ersin, let us know where we can find you. Where can people read more of your work? Plug your Substack. Take it away.
Yeah, man, I'm not as active on Twitter anymore as before. It's all about the Substack, man. I wrote about 230 articles in less than 3 years. It's twice a week. And a lot of people unsubscribe. And I will ask them why. They say I get too much notifications. The players that you write about, I don't care about them. I say that's fair. That's fair because yeah, that's all I stand for, man. The less coveted prospects, the guys that we just discussed. But also Division One scouting. I watch all the FIBA tournaments on the 16, 18, 20, Division One. Yeah, the next international players that are gonna go there, but also junior college. A lot of hungry players there. They send in their film. And I was like, send in your film. I'm gonna write about you. I'm gonna talk to your coaches and see, how you can go to the next level. Talk about the less coveted guys, because that's my way of trying to find a niche in this basketball space that everyone tries to find their role in. I write about these players nonstop, and also about the less coveted guys. And for me, it's all about fairness because in January, people ask me, "What do you think of Jeremiah Fears?" I say, "I have no take." I say, "How is that possible? It's a top 10 pick." I say, "I haven't watched him. Why should I have a take?" If I don't watch a player, it's impossible. You,
Love
you
that.
don't go with consensus. And for me, because of that, I'm quite wrong on a lot of my takes. But I will gladly be wrong because I know I'm gonna hit on a couple of them. And these are all authentic. These are all mine because I try to watch full games and I try to see what the players roll in, and then I go full on the roll, on the play types, and I write about them, and I go non-stop. And when I started doing this, I was writing notes, and I basically sat on them. I didn't do anything. And right now with the Substack, I'm trying to write about articles, and I find a good rhythm. I wanted to improve my English because it's not my native tongue, and I wanted to have some fun, man, because it's all about basketball. It's all the game that we love. And with the Substack, you get 2 or 3 articles a week. It's in the screen, edemir.substack.com. And for me, you have some tracking via Google. I have quite some subscribers, man, from New York. Of course, New York is a big city. It's maybe 5% of the population of America living there. So it's quite a chance that you get some people there. But, next to it, I'm grateful. I'm thankful for them because they have supported me a lot throughout the years. Because I started the Twitter account with no followers, and then you talk with people, and then you get to a certain place. And, Nick's Twitter has always been supportive, man. So shout out to everyone on Nick's Twitter, and I'm happy that I'm here for the heydays, man, because right now it's win now time for the Knicks. Maybe, we'll see a championship parade in New York because it's
Hell
time
yeah.
for that to happen, man. 15 plus years
Ersin,
is too much.
your English is not only phenomenal, but to be able to break down basketball in a language that's not your first is incredibly impressive. I can barely break it down
Thanks,
in
man.
English, and it's my native tongue. So great job in knocking down the X's and O's and giving us some great insight into prospects. Please follow Ersin on Twitter, EDEMIR NBA. That's his Twitter handle. Also find him on Substack. Ebony, my sis, thank you for bringing your brilliant X's and O's strategy as well. Please let people know where to follow you on Twitter and elsewhere.
You can find me on Twitter, TikTok, Instagram, Twitch at Mad Nick Fan. You can find me, well, no Nick games right now, but before every Nick game on Twitter at a space called Your Take Knicks. And because it is Liberty season right now, after every Liberty game on Twitter called space called Ballin' with the Queens. So yeah, that's it. That's my handles.
I wanted to give a special shout out tonight to Fritz Alessandro, who was going to join the show, but had to pull out because he had to produce it and wasn't able to stream simultaneously. So unfortunately, we didn't get his insight on the draft, but it would have been a great addition. We appreciate you, Fritz, for producing the show behind the scenes very much. We love you, brother. Please follow him at the NBA Economy Show on Twitter. Please follow KOT at the KOT Show. And then I just had a new article drop for Bleacher Report on the best finals resumes in NBA history since 2000. You can find that. And I have a new one coming out on the best undrafted players in NBA history for Bleacher Report later this week. That's it. Appreciate y'all tuning in. Thank you, Ersin and Ebony, for giving us your knowledge on this upcoming draft. I hope the Knicks hit a home run. In Leon, we trust, and more importantly, in Walt Perrin, we trust, who's been excellent so far in drafting for the Knicks. We'd love to have you back on, Ersin, again before the season starts to talk strategy and X and O's. And then, of course, you know where to find us here, producing content every week
Yeah.
with KOT. in the future. Definitely be covering the draft and who we select as well, and when we finally get a new head coach. All right, y'all. Love
Yeah,
all.
man. They're an
Love
honor,
the
man. You're
AOT
both too kind. Thanks for having me
for
on.
sure. Much
Thank
love.
you.
We'll see y'all soon.
Sure. Hey, man.
York,
Awesome.
New York, big city of dreams. New York, big city of dreams.
NYC.